Give me something.
Ow now, brown cow.
Oh, wow. You had that ready.
Ow now, brown.
Unique
sayings are
New York.
Unique New York.
Unique New York.
You're not so bad.
Audrey! Audrey, there's bags under my eyes. Where are all my friends? Sitting down with Jonathan Wilson. And I love doing this podcast. I love doing it with close friends and people that I just meet because I always learn something new. But it's cool because we've been friends for a while. And I feel like I'm excited to get into your story. I'm sure there's going to be something new in this. And I always like that. I always like when I have a rapport with whoever
I'm excited. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, dude, for real. So the way that I like to start it is for anybody who doesn't know who you are, just a quick explanation of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, my name is Jonathan Wilson. I'm a booking agent at a company called TKO. I book concerts and tours for a lot of hard rock bands, metal bands, whatever it may be.
Yep. And for the listener, we met years ago. I was managing a band in that genre called Limbs. And I don't even know. I think we met through a mutual friend, but we ended up working on the project together and you were our booking agent and we just got along really well.
Yeah. I don't remember how it came across. I just remember, I think the buddy Jason who showed me the band and I was just like super into it and connected us and we just met up at a pizza place and the rest is history.
Yeah. That was Jason Majot, yeah?
Yep.
Shouts to him. That's awesome. Well, yeah. So my favorite way, like the way I like to start this is taking me back to where you kind of found your thing. And I would assume it's something in music, but I don't know. I could be wrong. But like kind of finding something that you were stoked on, like whatever that first kind of spark was as a kid. And like, tell me your story like that till kind of now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I grew up always in a pretty supportive household when it came to music. My mom would always buy me like whatever CDs or whatever it was I was listening to. You know, I was dating back as far as I can really remember, you know, it'd be like a Blink-182 record or like Tupac or whatever it may be. But I think what really sparked me towards live music was in 8th grade. I had a buddy who just randomly one day, he was like, "Oh, you like Blink-182?" And he's like, I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Do you want to go see him in concert?" And it was Blink-182 and New Found Glory. And went to that show and I was just like, instantly from there, I was just like, I need to be part of live music in one way or another.
Yeah. What year was that?
So I was, it was the summer between 8th and 9th grade. So it'd be like 2000.
Damn. It was so just like the pinnacle of it being like good.
Yeah. It was like the Take Off Your Pants and Jacket tour.
Oh, like the tour for the album?
Yeah.
Dude, that's like a huge, I mean, I couldn't say regret because it's not like I like cognizantly chose, but I never saw Blink-182 in that era. Like I was a little too late for it. I was listening to the music, but I almost didn't understand that live shows were a thing or that like you could love a band and that they might be touring through your city. Like I know that sounds so weird, but
yeah, that was like my first concert ever. And just like the production they had and everything, it was just intoxicating. I mean, obviously I was already a fan of it, but like I wasn't in any way exposed to like rock music on that spectrum. So, I mean, before that I was like super into like sports and kind of closed off from all that stuff. He's kind of listening to whatever was on the radio. And then that friend just, you know, me and him just ended up deep diving into like punk rock and all that stuff like afterwards going into high school. That's
so sick. What do you remember? Like, just because I legitimately want to know about that show as a fan, what do you remember about like Blink's production or like what stood out to you the most?
Being in 8th grade, the thing that stood out the most, because I went to the show with my friend's parents because we were that young.
Yeah.
You know, they had to stay.
Yeah.
And they came on stage and they had a giant sign that was on fire and it just said "fuck." So when everything hit and the music came in and that sign lit up, I just remember his parents, good Christian family, were kind of like, "Oh geez, what do we get ourselves into here?"
And for you as kids, you're like, "This is the coolest thing."
It was so cool. I mean, I came home from that show and I was just like, "Mom, I want to play guitar.
Mm-hmm.
I want to wear Dickies and Hurley shirts and skateboard." I could never skateboard, but you know, she went out and a couple months later, she bought me a guitar and I started playing music and started, you know, little punk rock bands with my friends.
I feel like how many lives Blink-182 influenced by like just that era. It's so crazy to think about. But so you did play guitar?
I did play guitar. Played in just, you know, little local bands in high school. moved around a lot, which, kind of got me into different genres of music. Because I grew up in a small town originally, so you kind of just listen to whatever was on the radio. And then when I moved down to Florida for a little bit, got super involved with, BMX scene, and which it led into like the skateboarding scene and all that stuff. And, they looked through my CD collection and they're like, oh, you listen to like all mainstream bands, when I thought like Newfound Glory was like an underground band or whatever. And they showed me like other bands like MXPX, NoFX and stuff like that. So it kind of started expanding my knowledge on different music and all that stuff. So yeah, just started playing in bands, played in, metal and hardcore bands, getting out of high school and all that stuff. And, was kind of like the business person behind all those bands.
There's always the one business person in the band. Also, I'm thinking of this picture, and you were definitely the kid at the skate park that was cooler than me. Like,
no, I definitely wasn't. I was like 315 pounds.
Oh,
I couldn't do
way.
anything. I couldn't even stand on a skateboard.
No, but I'm saying you rode BMX?
Oh, poorly.
Oh,
poorly.
Because like at least for me, I remember like going to the skate park.
Big guys don't get much air.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I didn't really. Dude, you're so in shape now. That blows my mind. I had no idea. Yeah. But like there was that kid at the skate park that was like the BMX kids that listened to like heavier music than like you. You were always like, fuck, they're cool.
Yeah, it was weird. Like I didn't know there was like those two like cliques didn't get along until I went to this school and I was like hanging out with the BMX kids and they're like, oh, don't hang out with him. He's a wood pusher.
Wood pusher. See, okay, so check me out. I was skateboard kid. I always viewed the BMX kids to be cooler, but I didn't know that I was wood pusher. I just knew that the rollerblade kids were on the lowest.
Oh yeah.
So if you rode a scooter or rollerblades, that was like the general, like, oh yeah, like you're gonna get made fun of.
Yeah.
And I always thought BMX kids were cooler, but I didn't know that we were in that lower tier in BMX eyes.
It was just this constant feud. I think it went back and forth.
Well, also because you would have BMX night at the skate park or whatever, because like BMX bikes ride faster, whatever. Right. So if you got in the way of a BMXer, they hated you.
Oh yeah.
And if BMXers were riding, you couldn't ride the course because they're ripping all over the place. So there is that's funny.
Skate park etiquette.
Yeah, for real. Okay, you said you moved around a lot. What age did you were growing up in Michigan, you said?
Yep.
And what age did you stay in Michigan till?
So, a little backstory, I was like big into sports and like I hung out with all the jock kids and all that stuff until going to that concert, and then got super into punk rock and all that stuff. Came into high school looking completely different, listening to different music, definitely like started hanging out with different crowds of people. And then my parents split up, mom moved to Florida. There was like custody stuff going back and forth. So moved to Florida, coming from this small school, going to this massive school, was just kind of crazy. And then moved back to Michigan for a few years, and then ended up living with my grandparents just because, wasn't really a stable household for a little while.
Oh, so yeah, that's really interesting. And like, I can't front like I understand it, but I definitely have empathy and I can see it from afar. Like that's got to be tough to be that age and like not be able to control that balance of home. So I understand the moving. I get that.
Yeah, I mean, it was wild, but it definitely like made me who I am today because from being 14 years old, like my parents had just split up, so we were living below paycheck to paycheck. My mom was working 3 jobs, and so it was up to me, being the oldest sibling, to make sure all the homework got done and all that stuff, make dinners. So it was like growing up at a very young age.
Damn,
yeah,
that's actually like that's really interesting to hear because. Yeah, you're getting into these other hobbies, whatever, but like that's also a lot of life to be dealt at a young age where you do kind of have to step to the plate. So were you able to like get into your hobbies, or were you having to just like hold down the house for some of it too?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, it was definitely a hold down the house a little bit down in Florida, but like I said, I went to a new school freshman year. Like it was tough to make friends anyways, but moving back to Michigan, sophomore, junior year, I kind of went more so just kind of started living my own life and being like, okay, this stuff's going on at home, but I'm going to go to a local show or whatever and kind of find an escape.
So you're growing up, you had moved around, and really the common glue of it all was that you were playing guitar.
Yeah, I mean, playing music was definitely like a huge outlet and all that stuff. After high school, I started playing more serious bands. And I was like the person that would always book the shows, figuring out where we're going next, how much we're getting paid, and all that stuff. And I got into a few that were serious enough where we would start playing out of state, start playing like Weekend Warrior gigs, a couple like slightly more extensive tours, nothing that like lasted more than a week, but I was pretty much the point person for booking that, finding the venues, doing that whole thing.
Yeah, that's interesting how that happens, right? Because you get into the hobby of it and then it's like, all right, well, I'm in. How do we do more? And then you don't have a team yet because you're figuring it out on your own. So there kind of needs to be like the business person of that. And it's so funny because so many of those business people of the bands have ended up now having careers in the industry. But it's also interesting to me that pretty quickly, it seems, you were pretty in on music. Like if you were taking the time to become a Weekend Warrior band and figure all that out at, what age?
This time I was like 18 or 19.
So relatively
right
young.
out of high school.
So like I would have to assume then that you were all in on like, I'm going to do the band thing.
Yeah. I was fully in and playing like the live shows. Like it was a great experience. I was never like a fantastic guitarist. So thank God for the business side of things, because I never would have made it as a musician.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I was definitely all in. Like I wasn't going to college, any of that stuff. And just kind of wanted to see how far it would take me.
Yeah. That's cool. Okay. And then so what's the next part of that? So you become like, you're doing the business side of it. You're doing weekend
I was doing the band for a little bit.
Is the band like, is it getting more successful?
No, the band, it was a money pit. I was just constantly throwing away money. Like we would go to like Evansville, Indiana, and play in front of 10 people and make like $20 or something like that, and sleep in a van and whatever. So eventually got to a point where, I was living on my own, had very real bills, was working multiple jobs, trying to make ends meet. And I was like, all right, I can't do this anymore. I can't play in a band. So I quit that band. And then about 6 months went by and I was just like, man, I miss music. I miss being involved in it, miss like local shows, all that stuff. So I was like, maybe I'll try putting on a show at a VFW hall or something like that.
Okay.
So I put on a show. It was really successful. And then
it was successful.
Yeah, it was great.
Sick.
It was great. And then people came to me and was like, "Oh, can you book my band in your area again?" And so I started becoming like a local promoter in the area, and that led to a band coming up to me one day being like, "Oh, can you book our band a tour?" And I was like, "Well, I've done it for my own band. Like, sure, I'll book your band a tour."
Yeah. And so how were you booking tours at that time?
MySpace mostly.
Dude,
MySpace was like the best tool ever when it came to trying to figure out a new place to play or whatever, or even releasing music for bands. Like there's no platform that does it as well as MySpace did.
That was a magical time when MySpace was ripping. So you were like messaging people.
Yeah. There was like a shows tab on MySpace that you just put in whatever city you're looking to go in. And there's like a list of every show that's coming up for the next 3 months. And that's how I started building my database of venues and promoters, because I would see where all the bands are playing and all that stuff. And that was like the biggest tool into me learning how to book a tour. And honestly, anyone could do it back then. It was just taking a little extra time to just find the contacts and do it yourself.
Right. Okay. So continue. So the band hits you up.
Yeah. Band hits me up. They're like, book us a tour. I was like, cool. I booked them a 10-day tour. We're about 2 weeks out from the tour happening. And they're like, oh, could you tour manage us? I've never tour managed anyone before. But I was just like, yeah, sure. I'll tour manage you, figure it out. And, so it was kind of like a lot of that. I was just figuring things out as I had go. So I tour managed the band, ended up going fine. And they're like, we just want to be our booking agent. And I was just like, at the time, I didn't really know booking agents existed or what they did. And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll book you all your shows. There was really no strategy to the whole thing, but I was just like, find them gigs and did that whole thing. So I booked for them for, I don't know, a couple of years. And then, we're not a couple of years, but like pretty shortly. And then other local bands would be like, hey, can you book us a tour? And, so I started building a little bit of roster of bands that were starting to do some stuff.
Damn. So it just really snowballed.
Yeah. So it snowballed pretty quick early on. It was, in that MySpace, scene metal days. And I actually had some success with some bands I picked up early on. But unfortunately, I didn't really know what I was doing. And because I was having success, I thought I knew everything and I wasn't really willing to learn more or take advice from other people. So my band that was actually exploding at the time.
Yeah.
They really were. They were blowing up. Now that I look back at it, they had they got poached by another agent, like a real agent.
Oh.
And so I was just like, why am I wasting my time doing this? Like, in my eyes, I'd built that band up and all that stuff, and you know they had left me and whatever. So I was kind of bummed out. So I actually stopped. Being an agent for a little while and stopped promoting
that
shows.
really shook you.
Yeah, I was really bummed out. I took it really hard. Don't know why I took it so personally, but I think even nowadays, like if a band leaves, like I take it personally because I get really invested in them, not only as a band, but like as people and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So so I stopped for a little bit until I got the itch again, and unfortunately, like I had to start from scratch all over again. So I started with a new company name and all that stuff, and started building my roster back up.
So when in your first initial rip of success, you had started like your own kind of company name, and
Yep.
Can I know what it was called?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty self-entitled. It was the JW Agency.
Yo, honestly though, I have respect for that, and I feel like so many early stories of like successful people will like there's that beginning, right, where you're like,
It's got a good ring to it.
Yeah. Isn't it JW Marriott? Isn't that like a it could have just been an extension of that, their live division.
It was a steakhouse.
Yeah.
JW Steakhouse.
Let's go. They don't need to know.
Rolls off the tongue.
So okay, so you started that, you stopped then. And then you were telling me before the podcast that there was like a minute where like what were you doing in between that?
I was just working odd end jobs. I was it was from Michigan, so I was working on like factories and stuff like that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you straight like got out of it for a minute.
Yeah, I was done because I was just like, I mean, we joked about, how great it would be just to go work at a Starbucks and you live that life,
right? You
so
throw
like
your phone into an ocean, you don't worry about it, you go work Starbucks, do whatever.
I did it. I worked 9 to 5, but it wasn't really a 9 to 5. It was more like a 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. because that's how the jobs are in Detroit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How old were you at the time?
I was probably like 21, 22 ish.
Yeah.
So I did that whole thing and then realized, okay, I have a steady income and this job I can go home from and shut off from, but it wasn't really fulfilling other things in my life that, that urge for live music and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I just started the old company back up, and then I was grinding away for a couple of years. And then I was just like, okay, well, doing this for a little bit, it's not really growing past a certain spot where I can make like a sole living off of it. I was still working other jobs and everything.
Yeah.
So I started applying to, be assistants elsewhere. And I was like, I'm gonna move to LA, New York, wherever will have me, wherever I can find a job. Like I didn't have any ties at the time. So I'm like, I'm just gonna move, and then, so as I'm looking, this is kind of like, so I was 25 at the time.
Yeah.
And then just suddenly I got a call, from my aunt that my dad passed away. So this was a huge, like, obviously like big thing in my life where afterwards I start evaluating like everything I'm doing. Like, am I wasting time with things? Whatever. So, I'm looking for any kind of sign that I'm on the right path. You know what I mean?
Dude, that's so hard too, because like I personally, like I always thought that the teenage years would be the hardest. And then you get to your mid 20s and like you kind of explained it, like you don't really know, like you want to chase a career you're passionate about, but the money's not always there. And it's like hard work and you get screwed out of like growing it once and then you get cut out. You try the other side of it. So it's like, I think that your mid 20s is a really hard time. So then to lose your father at that time too, like, bro, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was definitely weird because like at that point I had abandoned going to college.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I'm doing this whole music thing, like one way or another, like I'm going to succeed in music. At the time I thought I was playing, and then like on the business side of things, I'm like, I'm going to find a way to do this. So like I had no fallback on like education. I started evaluating things in life. Like I said, like just looking for any kind of sign that I'm on the right path. And then, through like me sending my resume to like all these different companies or whatever, I got a call one day. Someone offered me a job working at a record label in Miami.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I was just like, oh, this seems great. It was a brand new label. They had like all this proof of funding and all that stuff. I signed a contract for a salary and all that stuff. And it looked like, okay, life's going to start improving.
Yeah.
And then, it's one of those things like almost too good to be true.
So was the salary like enough where you're like, yo, this is sick? Like,
yeah, I mean, it didn't seem like unrealistic, but it was like, okay, I'm going to live a comfortable life. Like from paycheck to all of a sudden, like, okay, I'm going to be able to save some bucks, all that stuff.
And maybe like a feeling of like, all right, like band didn't work, agent didn't work. Like maybe this is that spot.
Maybe
like,
the record label thing's for me.
Okay.
So they said they're going to pay for all my moving expenses, all that stuff. So I moved on to Miami.
From Michigan?
From Michigan.
Yeah.
Back to Florida.
Yeah. Back to Florida.
Hate Florida.
I love it. But different episode. Continue.
So yeah, moved down there, and then I go check out the office building that I'm supposed to be working at, and it's fucking abandoned.
Dog, what?
Dude, abandoned.
Did they pay for your moving expenses?
They were supposed to reimburse it.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. So I moved into this apartment.
What?
Mind you,
what is that bit? What is that? Who's getting anything out of that?
Mind you,
like,
I only have a few $1,000s saved up.
Yeah. What ploy is that? Who gets enjoyment out of
looking back? I think their intentions were right.
Mm-hmm.
I think they got in over their heads.
Oh.
So moved down there. There's obviously no job. They're like, they're still in contact with me, being like, hey, things are delayed a little bit. We're trying to get things going. So anyways, long story short, I moved to Miami, fall flat on my face. I burned through all my savings.
Yeah.
Maxed out all my credit cards. And we're not talking like $1,000 limit. We're talking like thousands of dollars in credit card debt.
And you're down in Miami, where I imagine you don't have much of any community. Like
nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody. So yeah, I got to a really dark spot. Dad just passed. I have nothing. I'm down there. I didn't even have a bed to sleep on.
Yeah.
I was sleeping on a tile floor, all this stuff. And
yeah, I mean, you experienced a low.
There was one point when I was there, and I just remember I had, like I said, no money. Credit cards were maxed out. I had 1 week where all I had to eat was a bag of rice and a jar of peanut butter. That's all I had in my place. And I was just like, at that moment, I was 25 and I made a 5-year plan on what I wanted to accomplish by the time I was 30. And I promised myself I'd never be that poor ever again. So a week later, I called some friends I knew that were touring, old bands I used to book and all that stuff. And I was like, all right, well, I want to go back on the road. I'll do merch, tour manage, whatever. So I went back on the road making like $15 a day per diem. That was basically it, but at least I could afford food. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then just eventually started, jumping from tour to tour. So I was on tour more than I was in Miami for this fucking apartment that I'm paying for that I can't afford and all that stuff. And so just started working myself to the bone. And then one day I got a call from a friend of mine who was currently doing merch for All That Remains. And he said he was moving on from that position. And at this time I built up a decent resume touring, and he offered me to replace his gig. So I went from sleeping in a van in Wisconsin in 4-degree weather to a week later touring on a bus with All That Remains. And that was kind of like the whole pivot to me getting like my life on track and like moving forward with my career. So so I started touring with All That Remains, and then that led into working with RX Bandits and all that stuff. So I stayed on the road for about 3 years, tour managing, doing merch, along with, running my own agency on the side as well.
Oh, so you were doing that again.
Yeah.
You brought that
back.
Yeah. Can I know? So like, I truly, like, you painted that picture well, and I can feel it. Like, I can feel just like that moment of like, it legit doesn't get worse. Like, you're in Miami and just nothing. And I love, like, that's so crazy to hear that. I had no idea. And like, I see you now and you're so put together, and it's so far from that. So it's so cool to like now talk about it. But in that moment, you say you made a 5-year plan. Like, how detailed, like how much did you know in that moment? Like, how much did you put together, and like how step by step was that?
I mean, not all the things I accomplished by the time I was 30, but most of them I accomplished by the time I was 31 or 32. So shortly after. I mean, there were detailed plans. One was I wanted to live in California.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a homeowner.
Yeah.
I wanted to be starting a family.
Yeah.
Or at least be on the path in one.
Yeah.
And then a couple of them were just like travel oriented goals, which I could have like going to Australia, which I could knock out tomorrow if I wanted to, but I chose not to do it because
Totally, like responsible. For your
priorities have
family, all
changed
that.
in
Yeah.
life.
And
But yeah, so I mean,
as far as like the work, like did you kind of reverse engineer it and be like, yo, okay, I can get back to it if I start touring, if I start booking? Like,
yeah.
did
So
you have an idea of that? Like,
yeah, so I mean, I was definitely doing the agency thing, and I used touring as another tool to start meeting all the promoters and stuff I was working with. So when I was touring, I would take as many meetings as possible whenever I was traveling. Whenever I'd go into New York or LA, like I would just meet with managers and all that stuff, and just make the most of the opportunities I had.
that's cool. That's really cool. It's I don't know, like hearing stuff like that, I just like I'm obsessed with that, right? And I think that sometimes in those super dark moments, you can get a motivation unlike any other. And like when you experience hello, it's like you won't go back to that and things like that. So I don't know, it's cool to hear that it all kind of came back and that you did come back to your original calling in music almost in a sense. I mean, I guess guitar was one, but
Well, yeah, I mean, like guitar's fun and great, whatever, but you can't really. I mean, very few can make a living off doing it, and I don't know, for whatever reason, I was just always programmed to be the one cutting deals and being in charge of the whole like live show process.
yeah, like that was like a
Yeah.
quick, like an early calling of yours that you,
Yeah, I mean, like I had done like artist management and stuff as well, but like I don't know, there's just something about like the deals that you deal with on a daily basis with being an agent just always drew me back to that.
yeah, that's awesome. So, okay, so then you're out on the road for about 3 years,
Mhm.
and then what happens?
So I was working on a tour with someone at TKO, and I guess they were happy with the job I was doing or whatever. And then so I'm just on tour one day, and I got a call from the CEO of TKO, and he was like, "Hey, would you be interested in coming work for us?" And I was just like, "Yeah, I mean, be able to go into an office every day and like make a living off what I'm most passionate about, absolutely." So when I was on tour with all our bands one day, we had a day off in Secaucus, New Jersey, and I took the train into the city and met with them, and they had offered me a job at TKO, and that kind of led me to my next chapter where I came back to the boss and I was like, "Guys, I'm going to finish this tour and then moving to New York." So another
Whoa.
move. Yeah.
And it was New York, because obviously we're in LA now, but it was New York at the time.
Yeah. I went to New York for the first year and a half I worked there. They just wanted me to work closely with them and all that stuff. And then eventually was like, yeah, I'm over the cold, going to California.
Oh, is there not a TKO office here?
Oh, there is.
Oh, there is.
It closed down for a little bit because they just didn't have enough agents to justify the office at the time.
Oh, but okay, so they wanted to be close, like the core of the company and the OGs that hired you were in New York.
Yeah, so basically
Got it.
TKO, the original owner is Dave Kirby, who's no longer with us. But so him and Andrew Goodfriend and Mike Monterulo all started the agency group, and they kind of opened the agency group office in LA, and then eventually left the agency group and started TKO.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yep.
Whoa.
Yeah, so they were all over the agency group when they had bands like Slipknot, Mudvayne, Nickelback, things like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whoa. Okay, so they held down that space, and then when they felt like they had enough leverage or whatever, they were just like, let's do something that we're deeply passionate about. They had more control over that.
Yeah,
started
I'm not sure
TKO.
the exact reasons why they left, but I mean, it happens all the time in
Right.
the agency world.
Yeah, you see that. That's interesting. I had no idea that it was like a evolution of owners or founders of another company. That's crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, Andrew had after Dave passed, he moved to New York where he was originally from, and that's why they kind of shut down the LA office for a little bit until they had more agents out here.
Oh, that makes so much sense. That's crazy. Wow, I just learned something. Nice. Thank you. Okay, so then you come out at a year and a half in New York, then you come out to LA.
Yep. So I've been out here for about 3.5 years now.
Damn.
I've been with TKO coming up on 5 years.
Damn.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, we're about to get into another chapter. You bought a house in Nashville.
Moving again.
Yeah.
I've lived everywhere, man.
Dude, you have legitimately lived everywhere.
Yeah, I lived in 5 different states. I've seen every state except for Alaska.
Really?
Yeah, that's the only one I haven't been to.
You have me beat. I think I have 4 left. I haven't done, we were talking about Hawaii. I need to do Hawaii. I haven't done Alaska. And then I think I'm missing South Dakota and Vermont, or the furthest. Yeah, I think Vermont. Whatever. Okay, so another thing that I want to get into as far as the podcast, like you're the first booking agent that I've had. And I really wanted to cover so many different aspects of the industry and even outside of the music industry, but just people who are professional and good at what they do and giving advice to people that are chasing that or people that could learn from them. So I'm really honored to have you as a friend and an agent on to help with that.
It's a lot of pressure being the first one.
Yeah, please don't mess up.
Yeah, I'll try
people
not to.
listen, they're like, you ruined my career, Jonathan Wilson.
We give a lot of bad advice.
How dare you give me bad podcast advice that I base my entire life off of? That's my angry listener.
I like it.
Before I get too deep into that, I think that pretty much tells your story as the evolution of an agent, right?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, most of the daily stuff is pretty mundane, so I think it covers all the big stuff.
We'll probably get into that as we talk more specifically. Yeah. Wait, one last question in it, though. What, if any, is there a moment that stands out as like a really cool, like a holy shit moment? Like maybe you booked a crazy venue or like a something, or have you had any like moments like that, like where you're in it and you're like, this is fucking cool?
I think the biggest one I had is obviously a full circle moment.
Yeah.
Was when I legitimately, a good friend of mine is an agent for Angels and Airwaves.
Oh, cool.
And I went to the show with him. He knew I was a big Angels and Airwaves fan. And he's like, oh, we're going to go say hi to Tom real quick. And I was like, I thought it was going to be a quick thing. Like, oh, holy shit, I'm going to get to meet my idol. Like, legitimately, when I was in high school, I wanted to be fucking Tom DeLonge. Like,
dude, I get it. Yeah.
Like, my guitar looked like his Fender model at the time. It wasn't his, but it looked similar enough where I was like, this is cool.
Yeah.
So I thought we were going to say a quick, hello or whatever. And then I think the biggest moment was we spent about 3 hours in his dressing room talking about everything from Freemasonry to aliens to fucking deep diving into Blink-182 and all that stuff. Like, so it was
a real connection.
It was crazy, very surreal, and I hope I didn't embarrass myself too much while I was there.
Well, you know what's also like, as you're saying that to me, I think that's really cool that so many professionals in music come from being fans and loving it. So it's cool to even hear, it's like, I know that you've booked such big things and like, as far as like money, like you've definitely brought yourself back from rice and peanut butter. So for you to answer that as far as just like being able to meet an idol, like it's cool that you're in it for the reason of just like loving music, I love that. That's a great answer. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have that, to keep working in music fresh, because if you lose touch of everyone you idolize and it all becomes normal, like then it's just another job and you're not enjoying what you're doing. So I think if you're in music and you're working, like obviously you take the most of like every opportunity. If someone was like, oh, you want to book Blink-182 or Angels and Airwaves, like, yeah, I'm definitely going to consider doing that. But like, I think it's also important to be a genuine fan of certain artists and not be too close to them.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And it's cool to hear that. So nice. That's sick that happened. All right. So getting into some advice, I really like to get into reverse engineering scenarios and like as an artist, or maybe giving advice to somebody who's not at where you're at, or they're trying to either follow a path to become an agent, or maybe you're an artist that's looking to get an agent, or you want to start playing shows, things like that. Like I find that really interesting, and I want to help anybody listening if that is what they're going for. So to me, the first question, like from the artist side, you're an artist and you're looking for an agent. If you believe you have a good product and you're grinding it out and you want to start touring, but you don't necessarily know how, what is that first step?
To start touring or finding the agent?
Could be both. Actually, let's say first start touring.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the most important way to start it is, obviously you have to start with a story in your hometown. Mm-hmm. You need something that's going to set yourself apart, whether it's just your music or your live show or whatever. And, start in your hometown and really conquer that, and then slowly start branching out. I think a lot of artists these days, because how easily accessible it is to, release music and, go on a tour and all that stuff, like, they kind of run before they can walk, and they start doing these elaborate like 30-day tours before they've even been able to sell 20 tickets in their hometown.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot more attractive for agents finding artists more organically. They get a little more passionate about it, and it's easier to find them when that story's already been built a little bit.
I like that. And then as far as like playing shows in your hometown, I would assume you just go, well, I don't have to assume, I understand how to do it, but sounds so douchey. Oh, I know how to do it. No, but like you just go to your venues that you like to go to shows to yourself, right? Talk to the venue owners, talk to promoters in your area. Start to put it out there.
Network your hometown. Figure out where your favorite bands are playing. A lot of tours these days have local openers. Like that was a big thing when I was playing music. That was unheard of. So you can start like opening for acts and start, kind of, piggybacking off their fan base a little bit to gain your own fans.
Yeah, be willing to sell tickets at whatever venue, whatever artist is playing that you want to open.
Start selling tickets in your hometown, and once you can do that, branch out 2-3 hours, start building little weekend runs, and then the story starts to grow.
Yeah. What do you think of? Maybe I'm fast forwarding, but like, what do you think now? Because certain artists are able to build such a crazy big social media following, and like so many, like YouTube views, Spotify plays, social media. What do you think of those artists that blow up in a sense online before they really start touring? Like, do you think the same thing still applies, or do you think that steps are skipped?
I mean, if you really blow up, like say you have a single that just starts smashing, yeah, sure, you can go out and tour earlier and have headline success or whatever. But it's crazy because a lot of times some of those streams don't really translate to actual ticket sales, and they might seem great, but a lot of times people that are just listening to music on the internet don't actually go out to live shows. So there's something to be said for actually going out and grinding and building that fan base organically and all that stuff.
Yeah, I find that interesting. I think about that a lot because nowadays, like, music discovery is so easy, but you're right. Like, not everybody that casually streams online is going to come and show up. So I always kind of try to find that balance, right?
I mean, it's obviously different from artist to artist.
Yeah.
So you kind of just got to live in the now and figure out what's working.
Yeah. And I guess too, like, even if you are an artist and you start to feel like you're blowing up, go to your local promoter if you don't have an agent and be like, yo, I feel like something's happening here. Can we do a headline show? Can we see how many people show up?
And it's the safest way to do it. Gauge it, like I said, in your hometown first when you're not spending thousands of dollars traveling around the country.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Okay. And then what about from the side of like, so you are a bit established, you feel like you do have a good product. Maybe you have done your weekend runs. Feels like it's clicking, but it hasn't clicked yet. How do you get on the radar as an artist for certain agents? Like,
I think, it's tough because if you just like send like an unsolicited email to an agent, like we get hundreds, if not thousands of emails a day. So it's like a lot of those go unread and unlistened to. Like I hate saying that, but like I'm very guilty of it as well. Like if something's like, if I get an email that's 5 paragraphs long, I'm probably not going to read through the whole thing or listen to the band afterwards.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can, send like a link and all that stuff, but, you can't get your feelings hurt when it doesn't get seen or responded to. I think the best thing is like, once you are selling tickets in your home market, promoters talk to agents and a promoter's going to go, hey, you should check out this band, or, they'll talk to a manager, and, the manager will call an agent who've already like might work on a bunch of bands together. Like if you call me and be like, hey, you should check out this band, I'm going to check it out. You know what I mean? Like, so I think the first step is kind of finding, creating that hometown story and then finding a manager, and your manager will help build that team around you. Cause an agent's just one part of the whole team behind the band. Like the manager kind of, steers the whole ship, and they'll bring in a label to help release the music and the agent to help, get all the dates and all that stuff. But I think the manager is the more important starting point.
Yeah, that's interesting. And for you, it's funny because I've been on the management side of it, right? So I don't know, but like as an agent, say there is an artist without a team around them, but you just have a feeling, like, are you down to take on artists that don't have the rest of the team?
100%.
Yeah.
A big tool that I use is every Monday I listen to that Discover Weekly on Spotify or Release Radar. Like all the times I'll just organically find an artist on there, and then I'll deep dive and I'll be like, oh, do they have a team yet? Do they have anything? Like, then I'll really sit on it. And, if I'm still going back and listen to it after a month, like Heck yeah, I'll jump on something early.
And another cool thing to add to that, hearing that part from you, because like Ben Farber was on the podcast and he's like a wizard with streaming and all of that. And I was asking him, and he's huge on like Discover Weekly and Release Radar. And the way that you get on those is getting your fans to follow you on Spotify and on those platforms. So as an artist, you could also, like if we're reverse engineering it, release music, make sure that your fans and followers save it and follow you on that platform, because then if those listeners are similar to the Jonathan Wilsons, then it will get served to you, somebody who doesn't follow them, and then that keeps going.
Exactly.
So that's cool. And then as far as, so you build a good local following, you're kind of getting on the radar. I liked what you said a lot about agents talking to promoters, because I think that there is something about like the product speaks for itself, right? Like if you're starting to draw tickets and you're starting to make a wave, it's almost hard not to get somebody talking about you.
100%.
So it's cool to hear you reaffirm that of like once the product is dialed in and actually getting attention naturally, the agents in the industry side kind of will take notice just naturally.
Yeah, I mean, we're working on so many tours every single day. Like we're talking to, different promoters, from Tennessee to New York, whatever, pretty much in almost every state. So if something's like buzzing, like it's going to get, talked about and we're going to hear about it. Sometimes some hear about it sooner than others, or some might jump on earlier, but I think it always just boils back down to your home base.
Yeah, that's cool. Another thing you were talking about is like sending the blind email, where sometimes like I actually really respect that. And I think that if you put out, I mean, you were saying like you sent out 1 billion resumes.
Oh, I mean, you have to try.
Like, you have to try.
You have to shoot your shot. You know what I mean?
Yes. But you said something that I think is very important.
Yeah. You can't make it a novel.
Don't make it a novel,
No.
right?
Dude, all a booking agent wants to see is a link to your website, your Facebook, and your music video. That's it.
Dude.
We can find the rest from there.
Dude, I think that like just that message, like I think that all of us in this day and age send and receive too many emails in a day. I think at any job that you have, if you have anything to do with a computer, you're getting too many emails. And if I can make the slightest impact in the world to get emails to be shorter and more to the point, I have done something good with my life.
Legitimately, I would respect it so much if a band sent me an email with their name in the subject and just go, I think we're fucking sick, listen to us, and then the link. I'd probably listen to it then.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, just tell me you think you're sick in one sentence.
Yeah. Hey, this is our band. We love it. Here's the links.
I mean, as a booking agent, like, that's basically all we have time for in email anyways. You've received emails from booking agents.
Oh, totally.
How long are they?
It's one word. You're lucky to get a sentence. Yes, no. Hold.
Got it.
Got it. Yeah. Thanks.
Whatever that automated like little Gmail thing is.
Yeah, how much do you love that new Gmail extension?
I actually, I don't use Gmail, but I was just using Gmail for the home buying process and going back and forth to my realtor. Like those kept popping up and I was just like, click.
Yep.
That was it. It was awesome.
Booking agents dream, that email extension. Another thing I wanted to talk about is as an agent, I mean, what your roster is probably 20-ish artists?
It's over 30 at this point.
Over 30, yeah. Okay.
Likely will be, approaching 40 here soon.
That's crazy to me because again, being on the artist management side, comfortably can do 1, can do 2. And as soon as I get to like 3, and I'm sure I know there's managers out there that juggle more than that, but at least personally, like I get to about that and I'm stressing. And I think that it's a slightly different thing for an agent, but just talking about like prioritization and like delegating, time management, things like that. Like I think that that's a skill that you have to get really good at when it comes to that many moving pieces. Do you have anything to speak on that as far as like how you organize those things or?
I mean, it's definitely like stuff that's learned over time.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like Jonathan Wilson 10 years ago could book 40 bands and, survive life.
Yeah.
But, as you get further in your career and you start working with a lot of the same promoters and you start knowing more people on a first name basis and you have the contacts like already imprinted in your brain, you can start working faster and smarter. Like say I'm calling promoter Bill in Missouri or whatever, like, there could be 4 different tours we're working on together. So while I'm on the phone with him, about band A, I can discuss bands B, C, and D all at the same time. So it's just like, it's always like working smarter and, just making the most of the time you're there.
Yeah, that's cool. Another thing you said to me before when we were just BSing that I really liked was like, kind of, there's not really formal training to this, right? Like you started off playing guitar, you happened to be business guy, you happened to pick these things up, but you were saying something to me about like, as you didn't really have formal training in the beginning, when you would see somebody doing something right, you were just like, ooh, I like that. I'll do that. And like how you like kind of pick up some of the details. And you were saying like recently you've been taking a lot more pride in like every detail in your show contracts, stuff like that.
Yeah. So like, I mean, with my story, I wasn't trained in any certain way. Like it was all learned by doing, like, just figure it out on the fly. I mean, there's definitely like ways to go about being an agent where you do get a little more formal training. Like you can go to college, you can come out, start in the mail room at William Morris or CAA, and you'll probably get, you'll probably be successful in your career faster than I was, working from the mail room up to being an assistant, up to being an agent. You'll get trained how to do things properly. Like that's definitely a way to do it, and a way I'd much more highly recommend than how I did things.
Yeah.
But me, it was all DIY, learning as I go. So when I started at TKO and I started working on bands that were making real money, like I was still just doing deals like as I would with like a band making $100. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just started like observing what other agents, managers, publicists, even like that I respected would do as far as when they're cutting a deal or confirming a show or whatever. And I just started adding those little things from each person. Whenever they did something I liked, I just added to my own little my little groove. Yeah. So now, like when I'm confirming shows, it's very much detail oriented. So that way, whenever a band calls me from the road, I already know exactly what's going on. If there's an issue or something like that, and can work through it.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it kind of it helps. When you are booking such a high volume, when you take that extra time to put in the little extra work, those details, when a problem does arise, it's much easier to handle, and you don't get overwhelmed by the amount of artists you're working with.
Yeah. I wonder too, right? Like you said it earlier, when you first started booking, like you had built that band and then they got poached and it kind of like really rocked you. I wonder if by having an early failure or what you consider to be something like that, a loss, I wonder if that like makes you more apt to learn later down and to be a little more humble and to like,
I think it definitely does, because like I said, it stung me bad.
Yeah.
And I've been very fortunate, like knock on wood in my career, like, just knocked on the couch.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some wood.
There's probably some wood somewhere in there.
Yeah, feel the back part? That seems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely some agents that are out there that get fired from bands on a regular basis, and they have a very high turnover. I can probably count the amount of bands that fired me on one hand in a 10-year career.
Damn.
So yeah, when I do get let go on one, it stings and it sticks with me, but I just take how much that hurts, and just make sure it doesn't happen again. And I fix all those mistakes I made previously and make sure I sharpen them going forward.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot, right? Because I think that it's easy, especially working in an alternative career path. When you start to have success, it's easy to be like, holy fuck, like I broke this, I did it, I'm living the dream. And it kind of will sneak up on you, like getting cocky about that. And then something can check you on it. And I think there's always more to be learned. So in a weird way, like, I don't know, I think about that often. I don't want anyone to ever fail. I want people to have their first thing and just rip. But sometimes those failures are really interesting to me because you learn so much and you become so much better moving forward. Like I remember my first like touring and tour managing, the first artist I ever worked with had quite a lot of success out the gate. So I didn't really understand that you couldn't have success. I was like, oh, this is just sick.
Yeah.
And then I start managing some artists and I'm like, oh, wait, this is grindy.
That artist that got poached from me, like still to this day, like I work with some very successful bands now and bands that make lots of money, but that's the only band that I had from the ground up that started exploding. And they didn't even reach their pinnacle of success with me. Yeah. Like they went on to be much higher and they're still a band today, but it's like, that's how rare that is. So, I mean, I obviously just wanted to learn from that. So when I get that opportunity again, I don't screw it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about that sometimes, right? Because like, obviously you don't want to screw up, But I just think that there is definitely the silver linings in learning these things early and becoming like, now you have like this foundation, which is awesome.
I mean, and also like a big part of it is like, I'm still very early on in my career. The artists I'm working with, I want to work with them for their entire career, the longevity of it, because like you build deep relationships when you're working with a band like every day, and you're responsible for their livelihood and all that stuff. You get to know their families and everything. Like to me, like if it's just a revolving door, like it's kind of pointless what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean,
no, I love that. And another thing, like, I think that it can, depending on, it's probably like this in every industry, but I've seen it firsthand with certain bits of music where it can feel a little bit clicky. And like, you know, like depending on like if you book the cool bands or like the whatever bands, like you can kind of end up in these high school cliques, what it feels like. And something that I kind of admired about you out the gate was you were never really above that, or you were never really that. Like it was always kind of just like music that you liked or people that you believed in. And I really admire that. And I think like you said something else to me, and by no means am I trying to like make any band cooler or less cool, but your willingness to take on artists, like you have a roster that's growing now so much. And in that, like, I kind of love your view of like, yeah, cool, like take it on. Like, not every band is going to be the super cool cred band, but when you have like the bands that you're not too cool for, like they still pay the bills and they're still good people. But I like that you've had that view. Like I see it in other sides of music where it's easy to get clicky. And I like that example that you said of like, don't be too cool for things, like see where it goes kind of thing.
yeah. I mean, sometimes you got to take a chance on things and like, listen, like, I'm definitely like, I came up in hardcore and like punk rock and like metal and all that stuff. So I definitely always have a huge passion for those artists. But those aren't always the artists that pay the bills.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you want to keep that breath of fresh air and, in your life that keeps this job enjoyable, yeah, sometimes you got to book some stuff just to pay the bills. And I'm not saying those artists aren't talented at what they do, but there's a space for every music that's out there, whether it's goth, whether it's industrial, whether it's mainstream rock, country, whatever. Like there's a fan base for whatever's out there. And, I think we're also just providing that to those people that are going to the shows. And you also got to think about, beyond the service we're doing for the artist, we're also providing a service to the show goer, giving them an outlet and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's true. It's super true. And like, again, like you look at your life and I think that you've set a good example of balancing that. Like, I mean, you as an agent, like you bought a house and you have a family and like, that's not an easy accomplishment in music. So to see that you still have the spark and the care for the artists that you work with and you've been able to balance that at that level, I really admire that. I think that that's a cool example to set.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It took many years to actually learn that. Cause like, when I first started at TKO, like obviously it was the first time I had an agency job where you have a salary and, you have like bonuses and all that stuff. And that comes with like added pressure, and they didn't, necessarily understand why I'd be wasting, time with like a smaller act and not picking up things that just pay the bills and all that stuff. And so I think it's definitely a learning curve that, you have to have both to be able to succeed in music. I mean, not saying you can't succeed just booking hardcore and metal, because a lot of people do it, but
yeah,
just for where I am in my life right now.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And like on that same level, if anybody's listening and they're interested in like the path of an agent, where would you tell somebody to start? Like what is that move? Or, maybe you're just the business person as an artist. Maybe you're a solo artist, maybe you're in a band, but like you're the one that relates to business. Like if you've had that thought of like industry side, what is your advice to somebody there?
I mean, just dive in. Don't be afraid to like fail at it, really, because you're gonna, learn more from the mistakes that you make than, not taking the risk or taking the chance at all. I mean, you can really just start a lot like by, booking local shows in your hometown. Like I think that's where you learn the most about, cutting deals in the business factory, because you learn about all the expenses that go into a show. You learn about, how to promote it and all that stuff. So I think the most important part to start for anyone is really just being a promoter.
That's cool. That's really cool. I like that. So then, yeah, I mean, you said it well. I don't need to say it again. Like I like that advice, and I think that it holds up very well. I feel like you've done a very good job telling that side of it and your story, but I hope that I didn't like skate over anything. Is there any piece of the story that I missed, or is there anything?
I think the main thing is like, if you know like you're destined to do something in life, like for whatever it is, like not everyone's programmed to be a booking agent. I knew I was supposed to be a booking agent. I still know that like that's where my career is taking me, like to be a booking agent every day. Like along the way, people are going to present different things in your life, like that are going to seem fantastic. Kind of like, you know, when I thought moving to Miami for that job was going to change my life and make it all better. So I, you know, derailed my life from the path I was currently on. Like if you know you're meant to do something, whether it's playing music, being a manager, starting your own label, whatever it is, like see that through, because whatever that is inside you telling you to do that, like it's telling you that for a reason. And I think it's really important not to be distracted by the pretty picture people paint for you.
I think that's huge. And I think like now more than ever with social media and like with seeing access to literally every career and the highlight reel of that career, it's very easy to question what you're doing.
Yeah,
And
I mean, people only put the good stuff out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Even when I was living in Miami, like I was only posting pictures of me at the beach. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hey, here's my rice and peanut butter.
Yeah,
No,
I
like
wasn't
you're at
posting
the
pictures
beach.
of me sitting on my floor with my TV on the floor. You know what I mean? Like so it's like try not to get distracted by all that stuff out there, because no one wants to put when they're having a bad day on the internet.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot. And I even to this day, like staying in a lane, I have to remind myself, like, stay in my lane, because I see so much and I get so excited about so much. So I think that advice is universally applicable to anyone at any point. And it's cool to hear that, because now you have stayed the course and you have really planted yourself as a booking agent, and it's paid off.
Yeah.
Sick.
Sick.
Damn. Thank you. Thank you for doing this. Like,
Thank you.
Honestly, I'm stoked that you were able to come on. I'm stoked that we had this time before you move. I'm going to miss you.
I'm going to miss you so much.
I'll come to Nashville. I like Nashville.
I'm going to be out here a lot.
Good.
A lot.
You're going to be out here a lot. Eventually, I will buy a house in Nashville, but we got to do this now.
Eventually, we'll find something else to work on outside the podcast.
Yeah, right? Well, fuck yeah. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.